The nanny froze when she saw her childhood photo in the Millionaire'S mansion. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Sullivan estate as Grace Turner stepped off the bus. She clutched her worn leather bag closer, taking in the imposing 3-story mansion with its stone facade and perfectly manicured lawns. A cool breeze rustled through her simple cotton dress, and she quickly retied her chestnut hair that had fallen loose from its braid during the long journey. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, straightening her shoulders before walking up the cobblestone path. For 2 months, she had rehearsed this moment, the culmination of years searching for fragments of her past. The advertisement seeking a nanny for the Sullivan household had felt like more than coincidence. It had felt like fate. Grace rang the doorbell, its deep chime echoing inside. Moments later, the massive oak door swung open to reveal a man in his mid-40s. Richard Sullivan stood tall, but somehow diminished, as if life had gradually hollowed him out. His dark hair was streaked with premature silver, and his gray eyes carried the weight of someone who'd lost too much. "You must be Grace Turner," he said, his voice distant as his gaze swept over her. Something flickered across his expression. Confusion, perhaps, or an emotion Grace couldn't quite name. "Yes, sir, for the nanny position." "Come in." He stepped aside, revealing the interior of the mansion. The foyer was a study in contrasts. Grand marble floors and sweeping staircase spoke of wealth and elegance, but the space felt unlived in, devoid of the chaos and warmth that marked a home with a child. No scattered toys, no fingerprints on glass surfaces, no echoing laughter. "My daughter's room is this way," Richard said, leading her down a long hallway. "Sophie is challenging. Since her mother passed away 2 years ago, she's withdrawn into herself." Grace nodded, feeling an unexpected tug of emotion. "I understand loss, Mr. Sullivan." He glanced back at her with sudden interest, before stopping at a door decorated with hand-painted butterflies. Inside, a small girl with raven hair sat cross-legged on a plush carpet, arranging dolls in a perfect circle. She didn't look up when they entered. "Sophie, this is Miss Turner. She's here to look after you." The child remained focused on her dolls, as if they were the only real things in her world. Grace knelt down, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Hello, Sophie. Those are beautiful dolls." Her voice was soft, without the artificial brightness adults often used with children. Sophie's fingers paused momentarily, the barest acknowledgement of Grace's presence, before continuing their meticulous arrangement. Richard sighed. "Let me show you the rest of the house. You'll be staying in the east wing." As they toured the mansion, Grace felt an inexplicable familiarity with certain corners and corridors. The alcove beneath the stairs, the peculiar pattern of light through stained glass windows in the afternoon. Each moment of recognition sent a shiver down her spine. "And this will be your room," Richard said, opening a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with simple, elegant furnishings. "My office is at the end of this hallway if you need anything. We can discuss your duties more thoroughly there." Grace set her bag down and followed him to a mahogany-paneled study. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a large desk dominated the center of the room. Behind it, a window overlooked gardens where a solitary jacaranda tree stood in full bloom. "Please sit." Richard gestured to a chair before settling behind his desk. "Sophie requires stability and patience. Her therapist visits twice weekly. You'll need to coordinate with her school and—" Grace's attention drifted as something on the desk caught her eye. Among the scattered papers and leather-bound books sat a single photograph in a dark wooden frame. A little girl in a white dress, no more than 8 years old, with a shy smile and familiar eyes. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "Who?" Her voice cracked. "Who is that little girl?" Richard's expression darkened with pain as he picked up the frame, running his thumb across the glass surface with reverence. "My first daughter, Eleanor." His voice was barely audible. "She disappeared 16 years ago. She was 8. Grace clutched the arms of her chair, suddenly dizzy. The pendant she always wore beneath her clothes, a silver medallion with the initials ES, felt unbearably heavy against her skin. "What happened to her?" she managed, despite the thundering of her heart. "She vanished from her bed one night. The police. They searched for months." His knuckles whitened around the frame. "Eventually, they told me to accept that she was gone. But I never—" He set the photograph down carefully, composing himself. I apologize. This isn't relevant to your position. No, Grace stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. Excuse me. Could you point me to a restroom? Richard gave her directions. Concern evident in his furrowed brow, Grace walked with measured steps until she was out of sight, then rushed down the hallway, tears blurring her vision. She found the bathroom, locked the door behind her, and sank to the floor with trembling hands. She pulled out the silver pendant she'd had for as long as she could remember. The initials gleamed in the bathroom light. E.S. Eleanor Sullivan, her true name. 16 years of fragmented memories suddenly aligned. The jacaranda tree she'd dreamed about countless times. The stained glass window patterns that had appeared in her drawings at the orphanage. The inexplicable feeling of loss that had followed her through foster homes and lonely nights. She pressed her fist against her mouth to muffle her sobs. After years of searching, of following the faintest traces of her past, she'd found her way back to where she began, to her father, who still kept her photograph, to a home that had never forgotten her. But why had she been taken? And by whom? Grace splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection. No longer just Grace Turner, orphan and drifter, but possibly Eleanor Sullivan, the lost daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the region, the little girl in the white dress. Pull yourself together, she whispered to her reflection. You came for answers. Now you need to stay and find them. When she returned to Richard's office, her composure restored. He was standing by the window gazing at the jacaranda tree. I'm sorry for the interruption, she said. Are you feeling unwell? He turned, studying her with newfound concern. Just nervous, I suppose, first-day jitters. She managed a smile. About the position. When would you like me to start? Richard seemed to hesitate. That same flicker of something, recognition, passing through his eyes. Tomorrow, he said finally, if that's acceptable. That night, in the quiet of her new room, Grace held the pendant in her palm, its edges worn smooth from years of anxious handling. Outside her window, the jacaranda tree stood as a silent witness to her return. She was home, but she'd arrived as a stranger, carrying a name that wasn't hers, and a truth too dangerous to reveal. Not yet. Grace woke before dawn, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling. The bed was softer than any she'd slept in before, the sheets finer than she could afford on her meager savings. For a fleeting second, she felt like an imposter. Then the weight of the pendant against her collarbone anchored her back to reality. She wasn't an imposter. She belonged here more than anywhere else. She dressed quickly in simple slacks and a blue blouse, tying her hair back neatly. The mansion was silent as she made her way downstairs, each step triggering faint echoes of memory, like déjà vu but sharper, more insistent. In the kitchen, she found a middle-aged woman already preparing breakfast. You must be the new nanny, the woman said, glancing up from slicing fruit. I'm Mrs. Caldwell, the housekeeper. Grace Turner. She extended her hand, searching the woman's face for any flicker of recognition. Have you worked here long? 15 years, give or take. Mrs. Caldwell handed her a cup of coffee. You'll need this. Sophie can be challenging. So I've heard Mr. Sullivan mention she's been withdrawn since her mother passed. Mrs. Caldwell's expression softened. This house has seen more than its share of tragedy. First little Eleanor disappearing, then Diana's illness. She crossed herself. Mr. Sullivan barely held it together after losing his wife. That poor man's been through hell twice over. Grace's fingers tightened around her mug. Eleanor, that was his first daughter. Such a sweet child. Mrs. Caldwell's eyes grew distant, always hiding under that jacaranda tree with her books. The police never found a trace, like she vanished into thin air. How horrible, Grace murmured, her throat tight. Was there ever any... did they have suspects? Mrs. Caldwell frowned. There were rumors. Nothing concrete, Miss Victoria. That's Mr. Sullivan's sister. She convinced him to stop the search after a year. Said it was destroying him. She shook her head. Speaking of, she'll be visiting today, regular as clockwork, every Wednesday. The mention of Victoria sent an unexpected chill through Grace. What's she like? Formidable woman. Runs half the family business now. Very protective of her brother, Mrs. Caldwell checked her watch. You'd better head up. Sophie needs breakfast before school." Grace found Sophie already dressed in her uniform, arranging colored pencils in perfect rainbow order. The little girl didn't acknowledge Grace's greeting. "Your breakfast is ready downstairs," Grace said. When Sophie didn't respond, she added, "I used to sort my pencils by color, too, when I was about your age." Sophie's hands paused momentarily before continuing. "I had a blue one that was my favorite. I'd use it even when blue didn't make sense. Blue dogs, blue trees." Grace sat down on the edge of the bed. "What's your favorite color?" After a long silence, Sophie whispered, "Purple." It was a small victory, but Grace's heart soared. Downstairs, Richard waited in the dining room, scanning the morning paper. He looked up when they entered, his face registering subtle surprise at seeing his daughter willingly accompany a new nanny. "Good morning," he said, watching Sophie take her seat. "Sophie and I were discussing favorite colors," Grace explained, helping the girl with her napkin. "Hers is purple." Richard blinked, then set down his paper. "Is that right, Sophie?" The child nodded almost imperceptibly, focusing on her plate. "Mine's blue," he said softly, as if sharing a precious secret, "like your mother's eyes." For a brief moment, the dining room felt less like a mausoleum and more like a home. After breakfast, Grace walked Sophie to the car that would take her to school, then returned to explore the mansion under the pretense of learning her way around. Each room brought fresh waves of half-remembered details: the distinctive creak of the third step on the back staircase, the way light fell through the conservatory windows in geometric patterns, the slight tilt of the hallway floor leading to what had once been the nursery. She found herself drawn to a locked door at the end of the east wing. Something about it pulled at her, a certainty forming in her mind before she even tried the handle. This had been Eleanor's room, her room, preserved like a shrine for 16 years. It's kept locked. Grace spun around to find Richard watching her from the end of the hallway. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I was just getting familiar with the house." He approached slowly. "That was Eleanor's room. I haven't changed anything since she disappeared." His voice held no suspicion, only the dull ache of chronic grief. "I didn't mean to intrude on private areas. It's all right." His gaze lingered on her face with that same puzzled expression she'd noticed yesterday. "You remind me of someone." Grace's heart stuttered. "Oh, my late wife, perhaps." He shook his head as if to clear it. Strange coincidence. Before she could respond, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house, followed by the sharp click of heels on marble. "Richard, where are you hiding?" The voice was cultured, authoritative, and instantly set Grace's nerves on edge. "My sister," Richard explained, his posture subtly stiffening. "She visits weekly." They walked back to the foyer where an elegant blonde woman was removing leather gloves. Victoria Sullivan was striking, tall and slender, with features that suggested she had once been beautiful, before time and ambition had hardened them. Her sharp eyes immediately focused on Grace. And who might this be? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Grace Turner, Sophie's new nanny," Richard said. "Grace, my sister Victoria." "How lovely." Victoria extended a manicured hand. "I was beginning to think my brother would never find suitable help." The moment their hands touched, Grace felt a jolt of visceral recognition. Something about the woman's perfume, jasmine with an undertone of something sharper, triggered a flash of memory, being carried down dark stairs, that same scent overwhelming her, a hushed voice saying, "Your father doesn't want you anymore." Grace pulled her hand away, struggling to keep her expression neutral. "A pleasure to meet you, Ms. Sullivan." Victoria's gaze turned calculating. "American, aren't you? How interesting." She turned to her brother. "Richard, darling, we need to discuss the Thompson contract. Perhaps Miss Turner could make herself useful elsewhere." Grace excused herself, legs unsteady as she retreated to the kitchen. Mrs. Caldwell took one look at her pale face and pressed her into a chair. "You've met the dragon lady, I see. She's very intense." "That's putting it mildly." Mrs. Caldwell lowered her voice. "Between us, things changed after Eleanor disappeared. Miss Victoria went from occasional visitor to practically running the household. Some say she stepped in when her brother was falling apart. But others," she hesitated. "Others," Grace prompted. "Well, some of the old staff thought it was too convenient. Miss Victoria suddenly having so much influence over the family business." the estate. Not that anyone would say it to her face. She nervously straightened a dish towel. Listen to me gossiping. Pay no mind. But Grace couldn't shake the memory of that perfume, that voice, as she moved through her first day in the Sullivan mansion, a place that felt simultaneously foreign and achingly familiar. Somewhere in these walls lay the truth of who she was and why she had been taken. And Victoria Sullivan might very well be the key to that mystery. By the end of her first week at the Sullivan mansion, Grace had established a routine. Mornings began with coaxing Sophie through breakfast, followed by the school run. The afternoons were spent helping with homework and attempting to draw the child out of her shell, a task that felt like trying to tame a particularly skittish fawn. Today, Grace sat cross-legged on Sophie's bedroom floor, watching the little girl methodically arrange her dolls. The scene triggered another memory, herself at that age, playing in this very house. But in her memories, there had been laughter. "Sophie," Grace said gently, "would you like to hear a story?" The child's hand stilled. Though she didn't look up, Grace took this as permission to continue. Once upon a time, there was a little princess who lived in a beautiful castle. Grace picked up one of the dolls, a delicate porcelain figure with dark hair like Sophie's. She had everything she could want, toys and books and a garden with a magical tree. But she was lonely because the castle was so quiet. Sophie's eyes flickered toward her. One day, she discovered a secret door in the garden wall. Beyond it was a forest where animals could talk. A friendly fox became her special friend. Whenever the princess felt sad, she'd slip through the door to visit the fox, who always knew how to make her smile again. What was the fox's name? Sophie's voice was so soft that Grace almost missed it. The fox's name was... Grace paused, letting a half-remembered detail surface. Rusty, because his fur was the color of autumn leaves. Sophie's eyes widened slightly. My mom used to tell me about a fox named Rusty. Grace felt a chill. She'd pulled that name from her own fragmented memories, not invention. Diana Sullivan must have continued the stories that had once been told to Eleanor. Did she? What kind of adventures did Rusty have? For the first time since Grace's arrival, Sophie's face animated. He could turn invisible, and he knew all the secrets in the forest. That sounds wonderful, Grace smiled, hiding her shock. Would you like to draw Rusty? I'd love to see what he looks like. To her surprise, Sophie nodded and reached for her art supplies. As the girl began sketching with surprising skill for an 8-year-old, Grace wondered how many other threads still connected Eleanor's childhood to Sophie's. Stories and traditions passed down by a mother who never knew her husband's first daughter. When Richard returned from work that evening and found Sophie eagerly showing Grace her drawings, his expression shifted from surprise to something like hope. "That's excellent, Sophie," he said, kneeling beside them. "Is that Rusty the fox?" Sophie nodded. "Miss Grace knows about him too." Richard's gaze met Grace's, a question in his eyes. "Diana used to tell those stories, I didn't realize." "Just a coincidence," Grace said quickly. "I had a similar story when I was young." His brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't pursue it. "Would you like to show me more of your drawings over dinner?" For the first time, Sophie willingly joined them at the dining table, bringing her sketchbook and occasionally pointing out details of her drawings. Richard seemed transfixed by this small miracle, shooting grateful glances at Grace throughout the meal. After Sophie went to bed, Richard invited Grace to his study. "I don't know how you did it," he said, pouring himself a modest whiskey. "The therapist said it might take months before she opened up to someone new." "Children often respond to stories," Grace said carefully, "especially ones that acknowledge their feelings. Diana created Rusty for Sophie after..." He paused. "After we lost our first daughter, the character helped Sophie process emotions she couldn't express directly." He studied his drink. "I never expected a stranger to make such a connection." Grace's heart pounded. "Sometimes the most unexpected people understand us best." Richard looked up, that same puzzled recognition crossing his features. "Yes, exactly." He hesitated, then added, "You know, when you first arrived, I had the strangest feeling we'd met before. Perhaps I just have one of those faces," she deflected, though her mouth had gone dry. "Perhaps," he didn't sound convinced. "In any case, I'm grateful. It's been a long time since I've heard Sophie talk like that." Grace left the study with her mind racing. Richard was beginning to sense something familiar about her, which both thrilled and terrified her. She wasn't ready for him to know, not until she understood why she'd been taken and who was responsible. The next morning, Victoria arrived unannounced, finding Grace and Sophie in the garden reading together beneath the jacaranda tree. My, she said, her voice honeyed with false warmth. Quite the domestic scene. Sophie immediately tensed, closing her book. "Good morning, Ms. Sullivan," Grace said, rising from the bench. "We weren't expecting you today." Clearly, Victoria's smile remained fixed as she addressed her niece. "Sophie, darling, why don't you run inside? I've brought you a present." Once Sophie had reluctantly disappeared into the house, Victoria's expression cooled. "You've certainly made yourself comfortable quickly, Miss Turner. I'm just doing my job." "Indeed." Victoria circled the bench, trailing manicured fingers along the wooden back. "Tell me, where did you say you were from?" "I didn't," Grace replied, maintaining eye contact despite the chill creeping up her spine. "And your references? Richard mentioned an orphanage in your background." "Yes. I grew up in the state system." Victoria's gaze was calculating. "How convenient. No family ties. No one to verify your history. My employment records speak for themselves." "Do they?" Victoria stopped directly before her. "I've made inquiries about you. Miss Turner, curious gaps in your background? Almost as if you appeared out of nowhere." Grace felt her pulse quicken, but kept her expression neutral. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm simply looking out for my brother's interests." Victoria leaned closer. "He's been through enough tragedy without inviting more trouble into his home. I assure you, my only concern is Sophie's well-being." Victoria's smile returned, sharp as a blade. "Then we share the same priority. How reassuring." She glanced toward the jacaranda tree. "Interesting choice of reading spot. Did Sophie suggest it?" "I did. Actually, it's peaceful here." "Is it?" Victoria's tone shifted subtly. "This tree, it holds unfortunate memories for our family. My niece Eleanor used to play here before she disappeared." The way Victoria said, disappeared, clinically, without emotion, made Grace's skin crawl. "Mr. Sullivan mentioned her. How devastating for your family." "Yes, well, life continues." Victoria straightened her already immaculate jacket. "Do be careful with Sophie. She's fragile, like her father." Emotions run high in the Sullivan blood. With that parting comment, she strode back toward the house, leaving Grace shaken beneath the jacaranda's purple blooms. That evening, Sophie asked for another story before bed. "Can you tell me about the princess again?" she requested, her voice stronger than it had been all week. "Of course." Grace sat on the edge of the bed. "What would you like to know about her?" Sophie hesitated. "Was she scared sometimes?" Grace felt a lump form in her throat. "Yes, sometimes she was very scared, especially at night." "What did she do when she was scared?" She remembered that being afraid doesn't mean you're not brave. Being brave means feeling scared, but doing what you need to do anyway. Sophie considered this seriously. "I get scared a lot. Since Mom died." "That's perfectly normal," Grace assured her, gently brushing hair from the child's forehead. "Your mom would understand. Dad gets sad when I talk about her. That's because he misses her too." Grace paused, then added softly, "Sometimes when we lose someone we love, it hurts to remember, but remembering is also how we keep them with us." Sophie's eyes, so like Richard's, searched Grace's face. "Were you ever lost?" The question hit with unexpected force. "Yes," Grace admitted, "for a long time." "Did you find your way back home?" Grace swallowed hard. "I'm still finding my way." After Sophie fell asleep, Grace stood at the window overlooking the garden where the jacaranda tree stood silhouetted against the night sky. Victoria's inquiries meant she needed to be more careful. The woman clearly suspected something. Perhaps not the truth, but enough to view Grace as a threat. Whatever secrets Victoria Sullivan was hiding, Grace was now certain of one thing. The path to discovering why Eleanor had been stolen led directly to her aunt. Grace waited until the grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight before slipping out of her room. The mansion creaked and settled around her, its shadows familiar despite the years that had passed. She moved silently down the corridor, guided by instinct and fragmented memories. Richard's study door was locked, but Grace had noticed him retrieving a spare key from behind a loose section of wainscoting. With trembling fingers, she felt along the wooden panel until it gave way, revealing the small brass key. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," she whispered to the empty hallway. Knowing this breach of trust was necessary, the study was bathed in moonlight, giving the room an ethereal quality. Grace headed straight for the filing cabinets behind the desk. If there were answers about Eleanor's disappearance, they would be here. In Richard's private sanctuary, the first drawer contained current business documents. Nothing relevant to her search. The second held family financial records. Grace paused when she noticed a folder labeled Trust Funds. Inside were details of 2 separate trusts, one for Sophie and another, still active, for Eleanor Sullivan. "He never gave up," she murmured, touched by this evidence of her father's enduring hope. The third drawer was locked. Grace hesitated, then retrieved a hairpin from her pocket, a skill learned during her less stable years in the foster system. The lock clicked open after several tense moments. Inside lay a collection of newspaper clippings, police reports, and private investigator findings, all meticulously organized in chronological order. Grace spread them across the desk, her heart racing as she confronted the documentation of her own disappearance. The headlines told the story: Sullivan heiress missing, no leads in kidnapping case, search for missing girl continues, Sullivan offers $1 reward for daughter's return. The most recent article, dated 5 years after her disappearance, read, "Sullivan case goes cold. Father refuses to abandon search." Grace's vision blurred with tears as she read Richard's quoted statement, "Eleanor is still out there. I'll never stop looking for my daughter." Among the police reports, one detail caught her attention. The investigating officer noted there had been no signs of forced entry, suggesting either the use of a key or that Eleanor had willingly left with someone she knew. The leading theory had been a kidnapping for ransom, but no demand had ever been received. A separate folder contained financial documents from the period immediately following her disappearance. Grace noticed a pattern. In the months after Eleanor vanished, Victoria had gradually taken over management of several key Sullivan business interests to allow Richard time to focus on finding his daughter. Within a year, Victoria had secured power of attorney over most of the Sullivan holdings. "Convenient timing," Grace whispered, pieces beginning to fall into place. At the bottom of the drawer, she found a leather-bound journal. Opening it revealed Richard's private thoughts. Documented through the years of searching, the early entries were frantic, desperate. May 15, 2009. Another false lead. The girl in Phoenix wasn't Eleanor. I don't know how much more of this I can take. September 3, 2009. Victoria says I need to consider the possibility that Eleanor is gone forever. I can't accept that. I won't. Later, entries grew more measured but no less heartbreaking. April 12, 2011. Eleanor would have turned 10 today. I still set a place for her at breakfast. Victoria called it unhealthy. Maybe she's right. November 30th, 2013. Met Diana today. First time I've felt something besides grief in years. Eleanor would have liked her. The final entry was dated just 2 years ago. Diana is gone. Cancer took her in 6 months. Now Sophie won't speak. I've lost everyone I've ever loved. If Eleanor is out there, I pray she's found happiness that's eluded us here. Grace carefully returned everything to its place, her mind spinning with implications. She was about to close the last drawer when she noticed a slim folder labeled Victoria, Financial Discrepancies. Inside were notes from a private investigator documenting suspicious transfers from Sullivan corporate accounts to offshore holdings around the time of Eleanor's disappearance. The investigation had been abandoned after just 3 months. A handwritten note from Richard stated, "Victoria insists these were legitimate business expenses. I can't fight both battles. Finding Eleanor takes priority." As Grace locked the drawer and returned the key to its hiding place, her suspicions crystallized into certainty. Victoria had taken her, or at least orchestrated her disappearance, for financial gain. The timing, the gradual takeover of the family business, the offshore accounts. It all pointed to a calculated power grab. Grace slipped back to her room, her mind racing. She needed more concrete evidence before she could approach Richard with the truth. The next morning, she found an opportunity when Sophie's art therapist arrived for their weekly session. "I'll be in the garden if you need me," Grace told the therapist. but instead made her way to the East Wing, where the oldest staff quarters were located. She found Mr. Jenkins, the 80-year-old groundskeeper, tending to potted plants in the conservatory. He'd been mentioned in several news articles as one of the longest-serving Sullivan employees. "Those orchids are beautiful," she said, approaching slowly to avoid startling him. Jenkins looked up, rheumy eyes squinting. "Been growing them 40 years now. Mr. Sullivan Sr. started the collection." Grace helped him water the remaining plants, gently steering the conversation toward the family history. "You've seen a lot of changes here, I imagine." "Too many," he grunted. "This house used to be full of life. Before Eleanor disappeared," Grace ventured. Jenkins' weathered hands stilled. "Terrible business that. Nearly destroyed Mr. Richard. I've heard bits and pieces from Mrs. Caldwell. Such a mystery. A child vanishing without a trace. No mystery to me," Jenkins muttered, then caught himself. Grace's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" The old man glanced toward the door. "Nothing. Forget I said anything. Please." Grace lowered her voice. "Sophie's well-being is my priority. Anything about the family history could help me understand what she's going through." Jenkins hesitated, then set down his watering can. Things changed after Miss Eleanor vanished. Miss Victoria was suddenly everywhere, making decisions, redirecting funds. Before that, she'd visit maybe once a month. "That seems convenient. The night it happened," Jenkins continued, voice barely audible. "I was checking the greenhouse. Saw lights on in the East Wing. Past midnight. Then a car, driving off with headlights off. Thought it strange. Did you tell the police?" "Tried to. Miss Victoria said I was confused, that I'd been drinking." Bitterness laced his words. "Next day, she suggested to Mr. Richard that my age was affecting my reliability. Nearly lost my position." "You think Victoria was involved?" "I think," Jenkins said carefully, "that Miss Victoria always knows what to do in difficult situations, always has the right solution at the right time." Before Grace could press further, the conservatory door opened and Victoria herself appeared. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she said, her smile cold as winter. "Bonding with the staff, Miss Turner." "Just admiring Mr. Jenkins' orchids," Grace replied evenly. "Indeed." Victoria's gaze flicked dismissively over the elderly gardener. "Richard is looking for you. Something about Sophie's schedule." It was clearly a dismissal. Grace thanked Jenkins and walked past Victoria, feeling the woman's eyes boring into her back. That afternoon, as Grace helped Sophie with homework, Richard observed them from the doorway, his expression thoughtful. "You're good with her," he said, when Sophie went to fetch a book. "Better than any of the previous nannies." "She's a special child," Grace replied. "Smart, sensitive." "Yes," Richard agreed, then hesitated. "Sometimes she reminds me of Eleanor. The way she concentrates." Head tilted just so. Grace's heart skipped. Family resemblances can be strong. "Family." Richard's gaze grew distant. "You know, I keep thinking we've met before, Grace. Something about you feels familiar." Before she could respond, Sophie returned, ending the dangerous conversation. But Grace felt Richard's eyes on her throughout the evening, searching for something he couldn't quite place. Later, as she tucked Sophie into bed, the girl asked unexpectedly, "Did you have a dad growing up?" Grace swallowed hard. "I was in orphanages mostly, but I believe my father loved me very much." "How do you know if you didn't live with him?" "Sometimes," Grace said carefully. "We can feel certain truths, even without memories to support them." Sophie considered this. "I think my dad loved my sister a lot, even though I never met her." "Your sister." Grace struggled to keep her voice steady. "Eleanor. There's a picture of her in Daddy's study. He thinks I don't know, but sometimes I see him talking to it." Grace smoothed Sophie's blanket, buying time to compose herself. "I'm sure he loved her very much, just like he loves you, Miss Grace." Sophie's voice grew drowsy. "If Eleanor came back, do you think she'd like me?" A lump formed in Grace's throat. "I'm certain she'd love you very, very much." After Sophie drifted off to sleep, Grace stood by the window, watching the moonlight illuminate the jacaranda tree. The pieces were falling into place. Victoria's financial motivations, Jenkins' midnight sighting, the absence of forced entry. but she needed irrefutable proof before confronting either Richard or Victoria with the truth of who she was. Time was running short. Victoria's suspicions were growing by the day, and Richard's puzzled recognition was becoming harder to deflect. Grace knew her moment of revelation was approaching, ready or not. 3 weeks after her arrival at the Sullivan mansion, Grace found herself increasingly entangled in the lives of Richard and Sophie. The little girl now greeted her with shy smiles each morning. While Richard had taken to inviting Grace to join their dinner conversations, it was becoming harder to maintain her emotional distance, especially when she caught glimpses of the family she might have had. On this particular evening, after Sophie had gone to bed, Grace wandered onto the terrace. The air carried the sweet scent of the jacaranda blossoms, stirring memories that felt more like dreams. Climbing its branches, reading books in its shade, her father, younger and less burdened, pushing her on a rope swing that had long since been removed. Lost in thought, she didn't hear Richard approach until he spoke. "Beautiful night," he said, startling her. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude on your private space." "Not at all." He stood beside her at the railing, looking out over the moonlit garden. "I often come out here to think." They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Richard spoke again. "Would you care to walk? I find it helps clear my head." They descended the stone steps to the garden path. Richard walked with hands clasped behind his back, a posture that reminded Grace of their walks years ago when her hand had barely reached his elbow. "Sophie asked me something interesting today," he said as they neared the jacaranda tree. "She wanted to know if Eleanor would like her, if she ever came back." Grace's pulse quickened. "What did you tell her?" "That Eleanor would adore her." His voice grew soft. "I've tried to keep Eleanor's memory alive without burdening Sophie. It's a difficult balance." "You've done well," Grace said. "Sophie speaks of her with curiosity, not fear. Thanks to you. In part, since you arrived, she's been asking questions she never dared before." Richard stopped beneath the jacaranda, looking up at its silhouette against the night sky. This was Eleanor's favorite spot. "I used to find her here at all hours, reading or daydreaming, without thinking," Grace murmured. "The view of the stars is clearest from the lowest branch on the north side." The moment the words left her mouth, she realized her mistake. Richard turned to her slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to stunned disbelief. "What did you say?" Grace's mind raced for an explanation. I just meant it looks like a good climbing tree." "No." Richard took a step closer, studying her face with newfound intensity. "You said the exact spot where Eleanor used to watch stars. How could you possibly know that?" Her heart hammered against her ribs. This moment had arrived too soon, before she had concrete proof against Victoria. But the truth hung between them now, impossible to ignore. With trembling fingers, Grace reached beneath her collar and withdrew the silver pendant. The moonlight caught the engraved initials. "Yes, because I've climbed that branch," she whispered, holding out the necklace. "Because this has been mine for as long as I can remember." Richard's face drained of color. He reached for the pendant, his fingers brushing hers as he turned it over to reveal the small engraved jacaranda blossom on the back, a detail known only to their family. This was Eleanor's 8th birthday gift. His voice broke. "We had it specially made." "I know." Grace felt tears welling in her eyes. "I've never taken it off, even though I didn't understand what it meant until I saw my photograph in your study." Richard's hands shook as he raised them to frame her face, his eyes searching for the child he'd lost in the woman who stood before him. "Eleanor." The word was barely audible, choked with disbelief and desperate hope. "Yes." The tears spilled freely now. "I'm Eleanor. I'm your daughter." Richard staggered back as though physically struck. "No, that's not possible. We searched everywhere. For years, we searched. I was taken to an orphanage 3 states away, under a different name. Grace, Eleanor, fought to keep her voice steady. I had nightmares about being carried down dark stairs, about someone telling me you didn't want me anymore. I never knew if they were memories or dreams. Who?" Richard's face transformed with sudden fury. "Who took you from us?" Before she could answer, a cold voice cut through the night. "My, what a touching scene." "Am I interrupting?" Victoria stood at the garden entrance, elegant, even at this late hour, her silhouette sharp against the lights of the house. She approached with measured steps, her expression unreadable. "Victoria." Richard's voice was strange, caught between greeting and accusation. "Working late again, Richard?" Victoria's gaze shifted to Grace, narrowing slightly. "And Miss Turner, how unexpected." Eleanor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The scent of Victoria's perfume, jasmine with something sharper underneath, triggered the same memory flash. Being carried away, that voice whispering cruel lies. "It was you," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "I beg your pardon." Richard looked between them, confusion giving way to a dawning horror. "Victoria, what is she talking about?" "I have no idea. Perhaps your nanny has been sampling the liquor cabinet." Victoria's smile was razor thin. "You took me." Eleanor stood her ground despite the trembling in her limbs. "You carried me out of my room and told me my father didn't want me anymore." Victoria laughed, the sound brittle as glass. "What absurdity is this, Richard? Surely you're not entertaining this fantasy." But Richard was staring at his sister with growing comprehension. "The night Eleanor disappeared, you insisted on staying over. You said you were too tired to drive home. So now I'm a kidnapper because I spent the night." Victoria's voice remained controlled, but a dangerous edge had crept in. "This woman appears out of nowhere with some wild claim, and you immediately suspect your own sister." Eleanor held up the pendant. "I've had this since I was 8 years old. It never left my possession, even in the orphanage." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Victoria's face as she recognized the necklace. She recovered quickly, her expression hardening. "A replica, obviously. This woman has clearly researched our family to exploit your grief, Richard. It's pathetic. Really." "The jacaranda marking on the back was a custom detail," Richard said quietly. "It was never publicized or photographed." Victoria's composure wavered momentarily. She switched tactics. "Richard, you're not thinking clearly. We need to call security. Have this imposter removed." "Why did you do it?" Richard's voice was deadly quiet. "My own sister. Why would you take my child?" Victoria's facade cracked, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "You have no idea what you're accusing me of." "I think I do." Richard took a step toward her. "The business transfers after Eleanor vanished. The offshore accounts, your sudden control over the family holdings. It all makes sense now. You were falling apart." Victoria's composure finally shattered. "After Catherine died, you were barely functional. Eleanor would have inherited everything when she turned 18. The company, the properties, everything our father built. You were too lost in grief to see what needed to be done." Eleanor felt sick. "So you stole me from my home, from my father, for money, for stability." Victoria's eyes flashed. The Sullivan legacy needed protection. Richard was in no state to provide it. She straightened, regaining some control. "Besides, I didn't kill you. I could have. I was generous." The casual admission hung in the air like poison. Richard had gone deathly pale. "You destroyed our family," he whispered. "For 16 years I've lived with the agony of not knowing what happened to my daughter. You watched me suffer day after day and said nothing." Victoria's laugh was hollow. "Don't be so dramatic, Richard. I gave you a clean slate, a chance to rebuild. And you did, didn't you? Found yourself a pretty new wife, had Sophie?" Eleanor stepped forward, years of suppressed anger rising to the surface. "You had no right to decide my fate, to rob me of my family, my identity. And what will you do about it now?" Victoria's voice was suddenly dangerous. "Go to the police with your fairy tale. It's been 16 years, dear. There's no evidence. It would be your word against mine." Her smile returned, cold and confident. "And I'm Victoria Sullivan. I have contacts, resources, and an impeccable reputation. You're a nobody with a convenient story and a knockoff necklace." "Victoria," Richard began, but she cut him off. "Be very careful, Richard. If you pursue this absurd claim, I'll destroy everything you have left. I have documents that could ruin you. Business indiscretions you've conveniently forgotten. Questionable decisions during your darker periods." Her eyes glittered. How would Sophie fare with her father in prison? Think about that before you indulge this charade any further." She turned and walked back toward the house, her posture straight and unhurried, as if they'd just discussed nothing more consequential than the weather. Richard and Eleanor stood frozen beneath the jacaranda tree, the full weight of Victoria's threat settling between them like a physical presence. "She meant it," Richard finally said, his voice hollow. "Victoria never makes empty threats." Eleanor reached for his hand, feeling the tremor in his fingers as they closed around hers. "I've spent 16 years without my father, my home, my name." Her voice steadied with resolve. "I won't let her take any more from us." Above them, the jacaranda's blossoms stirred in the night breeze, witnesses to a truth finally spoken aloud, and to the battle that now lay ahead. Richard led Eleanor back to his study, his movements mechanical, as if operating on autopilot. Once inside, he locked the door and poured himself a generous whiskey with unsteady hands. He drank half in one swallow, then sank into his chair, eyes fixed on Eleanor with a mixture of wonder and devastation. 16 years, he whispered. "I've imagined finding you so many times, but never like this. Never with Victoria. I'm sorry," Eleanor said, perching on the edge of the chair across from him. "I wanted to tell you from the beginning, but I needed to understand what happened first. Why I was taken." Richard set his glass down hard. "My own sister. All this time. She watched me search, watched me fall apart. She sat across from me at holiday dinners while I wondered if you were alive or—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Did you suspect her at all?" Eleanor asked gently. "Never seriously." He ran a hand over his face. "There were moments, inconsistencies in her accounts of that night. Her rush to have you declared legally dead after 7 years. Her insistence that continuing to search was unhealthy. But to think she orchestrated your disappearance." He shook his head. "Victoria and I had our differences, but this level of betrayal, it's monstrous. She threatened you just now. Is she capable of following through?" Richard's laugh was bitter. "Victoria never bluffs after your mother died. I wasn't. Well, I made decisions I'm not proud of. Signed documents without reading them. Victoria leveraged my grief to consolidate her control over the company, and I let her because I simply didn't care. If she wants to destroy me professionally, she has the ammunition." Eleanor felt a surge of protective rage. "She's manipulated you for years, and I let her." His eyes met hers, brimming with regret. "I failed you, Eleanor, both as a father and after you were taken. I should have seen through her lies. You couldn't have known." Eleanor leaned forward. "You never stopped looking for me. That's what matters." Richard studied her face with newfound clarity. "Now I understand why you seemed so familiar. You have your mother's expressions, her mannerisms. How did I not see it immediately?" "People rarely see what they don't expect to find," Eleanor said softly. "And I've changed. The girl in that photograph became someone else out of necessity." "Grace Turner," Richard murmured. "Where did that name come from?" "Grace was assigned at the orphanage. Turner I chose myself when I turned 18. I wanted something that represented movement, change." She hesitated. "I always felt like I was searching for something, even when I didn't know what." Richard reached across the desk, tentatively taking her hand. The touch was electric. A connection severed for 16 years suddenly restored. "What do we do now?" he asked. "Victoria won't let this go unchallenged. We need evidence of what she did." Eleanor withdrew her hand reluctantly. "Concrete proof that would hold up legally. Without it, it's exactly as she said. My word against hers. We'll need a DNA test." "Of course," Richard said, strategist mode engaging. "That proves who you are, but not that Victoria took you. Mr. Jenkins saw something that night," Eleanor reminded him. "And I've been looking through the financial records. There are suspicious transfers." "Circumstantial at best," Richard interrupted. "Richard, Victoria is too smart to leave an obvious trail. We need something irrefutable." A soft knock at the study door interrupted them. Richard tensed, but Eleanor recognized the pattern. 3 gentle taps. "It's Sophie," she said, rising to unlock the door. The little girl stood in the hallway in her nightgown, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. "I had a bad dream," she whispered, then noticed Richard. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't know you were busy." Richard's expression softened immediately. "Never too busy for you. Sweetheart." He opened his arms, and Sophie climbed into his lap, nestling against his chest. "Would you like some warm milk?" Eleanor offered. "It helps chase the nightmares away." Sophie nodded, eyeing Eleanor with a child's perceptive gaze. "You look different tonight." Eleanor froze. Different how? Happier, but also scared. Sophie's bluntness was disarming. Like how I felt when I got lost at the zoo but then saw Dad looking for me. Richard and Eleanor exchanged a glance over the child's head, a silent communication passing between them. "Sophie," Richard said carefully, "what would you think if I told you something surprising about Miss Grace?" Eleanor's heart stuttered. "Richard, she deserves to know," he said quietly, then turned back to his daughter. "Remember how I told you about your sister Eleanor? How she disappeared when she was your age?" Sophie nodded solemnly. "From the picture in your desk." "Well," Richard took a steadying breath, "sometimes lost people find their way home. Miss Grace is actually Eleanor. She's your sister." Sophie's eyes widened as she looked between them. "Really and truly, Eleanor confirmed, kneeling beside the chair to meet Sophie at eye level. "I've been away a very long time, but I never forgot this house or our father. And when I came back, I found you, the sister I never knew I had." Sophie studied her face intently. "Is that why you knew about Rusty the fox?" Eleanor smiled through sudden tears. "Maybe. Some stories stay with us, even when we don't remember where we learned them." Sophie reached out hesitantly, touching Eleanor's cheek with small fingers. "Do you still want to be Miss Grace? Or should I call you Eleanor? Whatever you're comfortable with," Eleanor said gently. "Both names are part of me now." "I think," Sophie considered seriously, "I think I'll call you Ellie. Is that okay? It's like Eleanor, but more like a sister name." Eleanor felt something inside her chest unknot. "Ellie is perfect." After they'd settled Sophie back in bed with warm milk and promises of more explanations tomorrow, Richard and Eleanor returned to the study. "We shouldn't have told her," Eleanor worried. "If Victoria challenges this, Sophie would have figured it out eventually. She's remarkably perceptive." Richard paced the room. "And keeping secrets has already cost this family too much. We still need a plan. Victoria will move quickly now that she knows I've revealed myself to you." Richard nodded grimly. "First thing tomorrow, we'll secure a DNA test. Something Victoria can't interfere with. I have contacts who can expedite the results. And I'll continue searching for evidence about the night I was taken." Eleanor hesitated. "There's one more thing. I need to officially reclaim my identity. Eleanor Sullivan needs to exist again, legally. I'll call my lawyer first thing." Richard paused his pacing. "But we need to be prepared, Eleanor. Victoria wasn't exaggerating her influence. She's built powerful connections over the years. This won't be a simple battle." "I know," Eleanor's voice hardened. "But she's underestimating us if she thinks I'll disappear again. I've spent my entire adult life searching for answers about who I am. I won't let her take that away now that I've found it." Richard studied his daughter with newfound respect. "You've grown into a remarkable woman, despite everything. Your mother would be so proud. Tell me about her," Eleanor requested suddenly. "I have so few memories." Richard's expression softened. "Catherine was extraordinary, brilliant, compassionate, stubborn as hell when she believed in something. You have her smile, her determination." He swallowed hard. "She never gave up hope of finding you. Even on her worst days during the cancer, she'd say, 'When Eleanor comes home.' I wish I'd known her better," Eleanor said quietly. "She knew you. That's what matters." Richard straightened with renewed purpose. "We should get some rest. Tomorrow, we start fighting back." As Eleanor turned to leave, Richard called after her. "Eleanor, would you mind if I hugged you? I've imagined this moment for 16 years, and She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and wrapped her arms around him. Richard held her tightly, his body shaking with silent sobs. Eleanor closed her eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave. Another fragment of memory slotting into place. "I found you," he whispered against her hair. "I finally found you." "We found each other," she corrected gently. When they separated, Richard looked years younger, as if a weight had lifted. "Victoria tried to destroy us once. She won't succeed again." Eleanor nodded, her resolve hardening. "Tomorrow, we begin building our case. Tonight, we celebrate the impossible," Richard finished. a genuine smile breaking through his grief for the first time. My daughter has come home. Morning arrived with a sense of urgency. Eleanor woke early, the reality of last night's revelation settling over her like a weight. She was no longer living a double life. Richard knew the truth, and so did Sophie. But Victoria's threats loomed large, a storm gathering on the horizon. She dressed quickly and found Richard already in his study. Phone pressed to his ear, voice low and intense. "Need your absolute discretion on this, Marcus." He glanced up as Eleanor entered, motioning for her to sit. "Yes. Today, if possible. It's a matter of the utmost importance." He ended the call with a grim nod. "My attorney, he's coming at noon. And the DNA test. Arranged. A private lab. Completely independent from any of Victoria's connections." Richard ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "The results will take a few days, even expedited. Time we don't have," Eleanor murmured. "Victoria will be calculating her next move," Richard agreed. "She was blindsided last night, but she recovers quickly." As if summoned by her name, Richard's phone chimed with a message. His expression darkened as he read it. "She's calling an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning. She's not wasting any time," Eleanor said. "What do you think she's planning?" "Hard to say. Could be damage control. Could be an offensive move." Richard set the phone down carefully. "We need to find concrete evidence before then." A soft knock interrupted them. Mrs. Caldwell peered around the door, her usually composed face tight with concern. "Mr. Sullivan, there's a gentleman from the Department of Child Welfare asking to speak with you, about Sophie." Richard and Eleanor exchanged alarmed glances. "Victoria," Eleanor whispered. "She's starting already." Richard's jaw tightened. "Show him in, Mrs. Caldwell." The man who entered wore an ill-fitting suit and carried a worn briefcase. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Harold Winters, DCW. We've received an anonymous report expressing concern about your daughter's welfare." "What kind of concern?" Richard's voice was dangerously controlled. "The report alleges you've allowed an unstable individual to have unsupervised access to your child." Winters glanced uncomfortably at Eleanor. "A nanny with a falsified background check and potential mental health issues." "That's absurd." Richard stood. "My daughter is perfectly safe and well cared for. I'm required to investigate all reports, sir," Winters said, not unkindly. "May I speak with Sophie?" Richard reluctantly agreed, and Mrs. Caldwell was dispatched to bring Sophie from the breakfast room. While they waited, Richard made a quick call to his attorney, updating him on this new development. Sophie entered warily, immediately moving to stand between Richard and Eleanor. "Hello, Sophie." Winters smiled, crouching to her level. "I just need to ask you a few questions about how you're doing." "Okay." Sophie nodded, her small hand finding Eleanor's. "Do you feel safe at home?" "Yes," Sophie answered immediately. "And how about with your nanny, Miss Turner, is it?" "She's not just my nanny," Sophie corrected. "She's my sister Ellie." Winters blinked, clearly caught off guard. He glanced at his notes, then back at Richard. "Sir, the report didn't mention another daughter." "It's complicated," Richard said, "but I can assure you, Sophie is in no danger whatsoever." After several more questions, Winters seemed satisfied. He closed his notebook with an apologetic smile. "Forgive the intrusion, Mr. Sullivan. These anonymous reports often turn out to be, well, let's say misunderstandings." When the official had left, Richard immediately called his attorney again. "Marcus, I need you here now. Victoria's escalating faster than anticipated." Eleanor knelt beside Sophie. "Are you okay?" The little girl nodded. "Was that man here because of Aunt Victoria?" Eleanor exchanged a look with Richard, who nodded slightly. "Yes," she said gently. "Aunt Victoria is upset right now, because you came back." "Partly," Eleanor hesitated. "It's complicated adult stuff, but I promise we'll protect you from it as much as possible." Richard joined them, placing a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Why don't you go with Mrs. Caldwell while we sort some things out? I believe she mentioned making cookies this morning." After Sophie left, Richard's expression hardened. "Child welfare? Victoria's not playing games. She's trying to discredit me," Eleanor said. "If she can paint me as unstable or fraudulent, my claims about her will seem less credible. We need to accelerate our timeline." Richard moved to his desk, unlocking a drawer to retrieve a small key. "There's something I need to show you." He led Eleanor to a part of the mansion she hadn't explored. a wing that had been closed off years ago. The air was stale, furniture draped with white sheets like ghosts of a previous life. At the end of the corridor stood a heavy oak door. This was Victoria's suite when she stayed here, Richard explained, fitting the key into the lock. After you disappeared, she moved into the city permanently. I've kept it untouched. The door swung open to reveal a time capsule, an elegantly appointed bedroom suite frozen in 2009. Richard moved directly to a cherrywood secretary in the corner and began examining it carefully. "What are we looking for?" Eleanor asked, running her fingers along a bookshelf of leather-bound volumes. "I'm not entirely sure," Richard admitted, "but Victoria was meticulous about documentation. If she planned your abduction, she might have left something incriminating." They searched methodically, examining books for hidden notes, checking for false bottoms in drawers, inspecting the backs of paintings. After an hour, they had found nothing of consequence. This was a long shot, Richard sighed, sitting heavily on the edge of the bed. Eleanor continued circling the room, trying to think like Victoria. If I had orchestrated a kidnapping, where would I hide evidence? Her gaze fell on an antique vanity with an ornate mirror. Victoria had always been vain about her appearance. According to the staff gossip, Eleanor ran her hands along the wood frame, feeling for irregularities near the bottom. Her fingers detected a slight depression. Pressing it caused a small hidden compartment to pop open beneath the drawer. "Richard!" she called, heart racing. Inside the compartment lay a small leather journal and a flash drive. Richard joined her as she carefully opened the journal, revealing pages of Victoria's precise handwriting. Most entries were mundane, business notes, social engagements, but several pages had been marked with small red dots. Eleanor turned to one such page, dated 3 months before her disappearance. R still refuses to consider restructuring the trust. E will inherit controlling interest at 18, leaving V with minority position. Unacceptable risk to company stability. Alternative solutions must be considered. M suggests removal of obstacle could be arranged discreetly. Requires further discussion. Richard's face had gone pale. It must be Martin Graves. He was Victoria's financial advisor. I fired him after discovering discrepancies in his accounting. Eleanor turned to another marked page. This one dated just days before she was taken. Arrangements finalized. M has secured placement at Westridge Home through his contacts. Clean break essential. R must have no reason to suspect. Transportation and documentation prepared. Friday implementation. Afterward, we'll recommend grief counseling and gradual resumption of business responsibilities for R. She planned it all, Eleanor whispered, feeling sick. Like a business transaction. Richard took the journal with shaking hands. This is it. This is our proof. Eleanor connected the flash drive to Richard's laptop. It contained financial records, payments to Martin Graves far exceeding his official salary, wire transfers to Westridge Children's Home, and a substantial deposit to an account belonging to someone named Daniel Reeves. Reeves was a night security guard here, Richard said, scanning the files. He was fired about a year after you disappeared for stealing. At least, that's what Victoria told me. More likely she was tying up loose ends, Eleanor said grimly. We need to find him. Richard was already on the phone with his private investigator. I need everything you can find on a Daniel Reeves, former security guard at the Sullivan estate. Last known whereabouts, current employment, everything. He paused, listening. Yes, highest priority. This is about Eleanor. As he ended the call, Eleanor sat beside him, overwhelmed by the cold calculation revealed in Victoria's journal. I always wondered who could do something so cruel. Now I know. Victoria will deny the journal is hers, Richard warned. Claim it's fabricated, but it gives us names, dates, locations to investigate. Eleanor picked up the journal again. And Graves and Reeves might talk if confronted with this evidence. Richard nodded slowly. We need to move quickly. I'll have my investigators track them both down. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. It's Marcus. He's at the front gate. As Richard went to meet his attorney, Eleanor remained in Victoria's preserved suite, surrounded by the possessions of the woman who had stolen her life. The journal felt heavy in her hands. A record of calculated cruelty that had shattered a family for the sake of power and control. For the first time since her return, Eleanor allowed herself to fully feel the magnitude of what Victoria had done. 16 years stolen, A childhood lost. A father left to grieve, never knowing if his daughter was alive or dead. "I won't let you win again," she whispered to the empty room. "This time, I'm fighting back." Marcus Donovan had been the Sullivan family attorney for over 20 years. He was a tall, austere man with silver temples and the measured speech of someone who weighed each word before releasing it. He showed no visible reaction when Richard explained the situation. Only a slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his shock. "I always had my suspicions about Victoria," he said, carefully examining Victoria's journal. "But this is beyond what even I imagined her capable of." "Is it enough?" Richard asked, pacing the study. "Legally speaking." Marcus set the journal down. "It's compelling, certainly. The journal combined with the financial records creates a strong circumstantial case, but Victoria will claim forgery, manipulation of digital records, and after 16 years, physical evidence will be nearly impossible to find." Eleanor, who had been silently observing from the window seat, spoke up. "What about the DNA test? That proves I'm Eleanor." "It proves your identity," Marcus corrected gently. "Not that Victoria orchestrated your abduction. Those are separate legal matters. We need testimony," Richard concluded. "Graves or Reeves? Someone who was directly involved." "Precisely." Marcus nodded. "And quickly, once Victoria realizes what you've found, she'll move to neutralize these witnesses." Richard's phone rang. His private investigator. He put it on speaker. "Mr. Sullivan, we've located Daniel Reeves. He's working security at a shopping mall in Phoenix. As for Martin Graves, he's more challenging. Left the country about 5 years ago. Last known location was Belize, but the trail goes cold. Focus on Reeves," Richard instructed. "I want him here as soon as possible." "Sir, there's something else. We've been monitoring Victoria Sullivan as requested. She's been making calls to several board members of Sullivan Enterprises, and she's booked a private jet for tomorrow afternoon." Richard frowned. "Where to?" "Switzerland, sir. One-way ticket." After the call ended, the implications hung heavy in the air. "She's planning to flee," Eleanor said, "after doing maximum damage at the board meeting." Richard added grimly, "She'll try to strip me of authority, possibly freeze assets, then disappear with whatever she can liquidate." Marcus straightened his tie, a gesture that seemed to signal a shift to action. "You need to counter her move before she makes it. Call your own meeting. Not of the board, but of everyone who matters." "A family gathering," Richard said slowly, understanding dawning. "Precisely. The annual Sullivan Foundation Gala is in 3 days. Everyone who's anyone in your circle will be there. Move it up to tomorrow evening." "On what pretext?" Eleanor asked. "A special announcement." Marcus looked between them. "The return of the Sullivan heiress." Richard nodded, already reaching for his phone. "Victoria won't expect us to go public so quickly. She'll think we're still gathering evidence, building a legal case." "Which we are," Marcus clarified. "But the court of public opinion moves faster than the justice system. Once Eleanor is publicly acknowledged as your daughter, Victoria loses significant leverage." Eleanor felt a flutter of anxiety. "You want me to reveal myself to everyone at once. The media will be a circus. Better on our terms than Victoria's," Richard said gently. "She's already tried to paint you as unstable with the child welfare visit. If we don't control this narrative, she will." Marcus outlined the plan. An exclusive gathering of family friends, business associates, and select media, DNA test results fast-tracked to arrive before the event. Richard would make the announcement, introducing Eleanor to society as his long-lost daughter, finally home. "And Victoria?" Eleanor asked. "She'll deny everything." "She'll be invited, of course," Marcus said with the faintest hint of a smile. "It would look suspicious if she weren't, but she'll be walking into a situation she can't control. We still need Reeves's testimony to truly corner her," Richard reminded them. "My investigators are bringing him in tonight. With the right incentives, he may be willing to speak publicly." As Marcus left to begin preparations, Richard turned to Eleanor. "Are you ready for this? Once we announce who you are, there's no going back. Your privacy, your life as Grace Turner, it's over." Eleanor looked out the window to where Sophie was playing beneath the jacaranda tree. "Grace Turner was always temporary, a placeholder until I could find my way back to being Eleanor Sullivan." She turned to her father with newfound determination. "I'm ready to reclaim my name." The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of activity. Richard's executive assistant, sworn to secrecy, rescheduled the foundation gala with a vague promise of an announcement that will reshape the Sullivan legacy. Key family friends received personal calls from Richard. Caterers were contacted, security arrangements modified, and the ballroom prepared for an event that had suddenly taken on historic significance. Eleanor found herself in a daze, watching the mansion transform around her. Staff hurried through corridors, carrying flowers and linens, speaking in excited whispers about the mysterious last-minute changes. Sophie observed the commotion with wide eyes. "Is it like Cinderella's ball?" she asked as Eleanor helped her with homework. "Something like that." Eleanor smiled, but with a different kind of princess story. "Will I get to wear a pretty dress too?" "The prettiest," Eleanor promised. "We both will." Late that afternoon, Victoria called. Richard put the phone on speaker so Eleanor could hear. "Richard?" "Darling." Victoria's voice was honey smooth, betraying nothing of last night's confrontation. "I'm hearing the most curious rumors about the gala being moved up. Is everything all right?" "Perfectly fine," Richard matched her tone. "Just a scheduling conflict with some of our major donors. You'll be there, I trust." A barely perceptible pause. "Of course, though I must admit, I'm intrigued by this sudden change. Anything I should know about?" "Just a special announcement. Family matters." Another pause, longer this time. "I see. Well, I look forward to it, and Richard, I hope you've reconsidered our conversation from last night. For everyone's sake." After she hung up, Eleanor shivered. "She suspects something, but she doesn't know what," Richard said. "She's fishing." That evening, Richard's investigator called again. They had located Reeves and were bringing him in, but he was nervous, asking about immunity. Marcus was already working on the legal details. After dinner, Richard took Eleanor to Catherine's closet, a room that had been preserved since her death. "I thought you might want to choose something of hers to wear tomorrow," he said softly. "She was about your size." The closet was a time capsule of elegant clothing, preserved with care and a touch of reverence. Eleanor ran her fingers along the fabrics. Another piece of her mother she had been denied. At the back, she found a deep blue evening gown with a subtle shimmer, sophisticated yet understated. "This one," she said, holding it against herself. Richard's eyes misted. "Her favorite. She wore it the night we announced we were expecting you." Eleanor hugged the dress close. "Then, it's perfect for tomorrow." Later, alone in her room, Eleanor stood at the window watching security personnel discreetly positioning themselves around the estate. Tomorrow would change everything. The world would know who she was, both the girl who had been stolen and the woman who had found her way home. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back off while you still can. Some truths are better left buried." Eleanor stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. Victoria's intimidation tactics wouldn't work anymore. Tomorrow, Eleanor Sullivan would step out of the shadows and reclaim her rightful place, not just in her father's home, but in the world that had been stolen from her 16 years ago. The stage was set. The players were in position. And this time, Victoria wouldn't be the one controlling the narrative. The Sullivan mansion gleamed under the evening sky, every window illuminated, the circular driveway lined with luxury vehicles. Inside, the grand ballroom, rarely used in recent years, had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over elegant table settings, and arrangements of white roses and jacaranda blossoms created a subtle theme that wasn't lost on Eleanor. She stood in her mother's blue gown before the full-length mirror in what had once been her childhood bedroom, now opened and hastily prepared for this moment. The dress fit as if made for her, requiring only minor adjustments. Her hair, styled in an elegant updo, completed the transformation from Grace Turner to Eleanor Sullivan. A soft knock at the door preceded Sophie's entrance. The little girl twirled in her lavender dress, eyes wide with excitement. "You look like a real princess, Ellie." Eleanor smiled, kneeling to her sister's level. "And so do you, the prettiest one here." Richard appeared in the doorway, handsome in his tailored suit but visibly tense. "It's time. The DNA results just arrived by courier." He held up a sealed envelope. "Marcus has them." "And Reeves?" Eleanor asked, standing. "Downstairs with security. He's agreed to make a statement in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Richard approached, taking her hands. Are you ready for this? Once we go downstairs, everything changes. Eleanor took a steadying breath. I've been ready for 16 years. I just didn't know what I was waiting for. The three of them descended the grand staircase together, a family united after years of fracture. Guests mingled below, the low hum of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter. Eleanor recognized some faces from photographs and news articles. Business associates, family friends, local dignitaries, and at the center of a small group near the bar stood Victoria, elegant in black, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, Victoria looked up. For the briefest moment, her composure faltered at the sight of Eleanor in Catherine's iconic dress. Then the mask slipped back into place, and she approached with practiced charm. Richard, darling, what a lovely surprise. And Sophie, don't you look beautiful? Her gaze shifted to Eleanor, cold assessment beneath the smile. Miss Turner, how unexpected to see you included in the family processional. Victoria. Richard's voice was controlled but distant. So glad you could make it, especially given your travel plans tomorrow. Victoria's smile tightened fractionally. Just a brief business trip. Nothing that would keep me from such an important family event. She touched her brother's arm. Speaking of which, everyone's buzzing about your announcement. Care to give your sister a preview? All in good time, Richard replied. Please, enjoy yourself. This will be a night to remember. As Victoria moved away, Marcus approached with a distinguished older gentleman. Richard, the lab director is here to verify the results personally. Eleanor felt a flutter of nervousness as the envelope was opened. The director reviewed the contents, then nodded solemnly. The results are conclusive. A 99.98% match to Richard Sullivan. There's no question of paternity. Relief washed over Eleanor, though she had never doubted her identity. This was simply the final confirmation, the irrefutable proof that would silence any skeptics. Richard squeezed her hand. Time to make the announcement. He led her toward the small stage where a microphone had been set up. The room quieted as Richard tapped the glass, gaining everyone's attention. Eleanor saw Victoria position herself near an exit, a calculated move that didn't go unnoticed by the security personnel discreetly stationed around the room. Friends, family, distinguished guests, Richard began, his voice steady despite the emotion Eleanor could sense beneath the surface. Thank you for joining us on such short notice. Many of you have stood by the Sullivan family through our darkest times, and it's fitting that you're here tonight for what may be our brightest moment. The room was completely silent now, anticipation hanging in the air. 16 years ago, my daughter Eleanor was taken from this house in the night. Despite years of searching, we never found her. Richard paused, emotion threatening to overcome him. Until now, a murmur swept through the crowd as Richard gestured for Eleanor to join him. She stepped forward, feeling every eye in the room upon her. It is my profound joy to introduce, or rather reintroduce my daughter, Eleanor Catherine Sullivan. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. Eleanor scanned the faces. Shock, disbelief, wonder, until her eyes locked with Victoria's across the room. Her aunt's expression had frozen in a rictus of controlled panic. DNA testing has conclusively confirmed her identity, Richard continued. Eleanor has returned home, to her family and her rightful place. Questions burst forth from all directions. Richard raised his hands for quiet. I understand you have many questions. So did I when Eleanor first approached me, but the evidence is irrefutable. From the side of the room, Marcus stepped forward with the lab director, who confirmed the DNA match for the assembled guests. Another wave of murmurs swept the room. How? Someone called out. Where has she been all these years? Eleanor stepped to the microphone, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I was taken to an orphanage 3 states away, registered under a false name. I grew up in the foster system with no knowledge of my true identity, only fragments of memories. And this, she held up the silver pendant with the initials E.S., recognizable to many of the longtime family friends. Another ripple of recognition moved through the crowd. It wasn't until I saw my own childhood photograph in this house that the pieces began to come together. Victoria suddenly moved forward, her voice cutting through the commotion. This is absurd, Richard. You've been deceived by an opportunist with a convincing story. DNA can be manipulated, documents forged. Richard's expression hardened. The evidence goes far beyond DNA, Victoria. We have proof of who took Eleanor and why. He nodded to security, who escorted a nervous-looking middle-aged man to the stage. Daniel Reeves stood uncomfortably before the crowd, his eyes darting to Victoria with undisguised fear. Mr. Reeves was a security guard here 16 years ago, Richard explained. He has provided a sworn statement regarding the events of that night. Marcus handed Reeves a document, which he read in a shaking voice. On the night of April 12, 2009, I facilitated access to the Sullivan Mansion's East Wing under direct instruction from Victoria Sullivan. I was paid $50,000 to disable security systems and provide entry through a service door. I was told it was for a family matter that Richard Sullivan had approved. Victoria stepped forward, her composure cracking. This is slander, a fabricated testimony from a disgraced employee. We also have this, Richard continued, as if she hadn't spoken. Marcus displayed images of Victoria's journal entries on a screen behind them. Victoria's own journal, detailing her plan to remove Eleanor from the family to gain control of the Sullivan holdings. The room had gone deathly quiet. Victoria looked around wildly, finding only accusatory stares. This is absurd, she hissed. That's not my journal. This is an elaborate setup. It was found in your suite, Victoria, in your secret compartment, along with financial records showing payments to Reeves and to Westridge Children's Home. Richard's voice was implacable. You took my daughter. You watched me search for her for 16 years. You consoled me while knowing exactly where she was. Victoria's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A brittle, unhinged sound that silenced the murmuring crowd. You always were too sentimental for your own good, Richard. Her refined mask had slipped completely now, revealing the cold calculation beneath. After Catherine died, you were useless, pathetic. Someone had to preserve what father built. Someone had to make the hard decisions. By kidnapping my child, Richard's voice shook with rage. By removing an obstacle, Victoria snapped. Eleanor would have inherited controlling interest. A child the company would have been run into the ground by your grief and her inexperience. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Victoria seemed beyond caring now, years of hidden contempt pouring forth. I did what was necessary. I always have. While you wallowed in grief, I saved this family's legacy. She turned to the stunned crowd. He was weak, unfit to lead. Someone had to step in. So you stole my childhood, Eleanor said quietly. Stepping forward, you ripped me from my home, my family, my identity, all for power and money. Victoria's gaze snapped to Eleanor, cold and assessing. You survived, didn't you? I could have arranged worse. The casual cruelty of the statement rippled through the room. Security moved in closer as several guests began backing away from Victoria. Officers are waiting outside, Richard said, his voice steady once more. The evidence has been provided to the district attorney. You'll be charged with kidnapping, fraud, and embezzlement. To start. Victoria's expression shifted, calculation replacing fury. You'd really destroy your own sister. Have the Sullivan name dragged through the tabloids. Think of Sophie, Richard. Think of what this will do to her. I am thinking of Sophie, Richard replied. I'm teaching her that no one is above justice, not even family. Two plainclothes officers stepped forward from the edges of the room. Victoria's eyes darted toward the exit, but security personnel blocked her path. Victoria Sullivan, one officer began. You're under arrest for the kidnapping of Eleanor Sullivan, conspiracy to commit fraud, and embezzlement. As they recited her rights and placed handcuffs on her wrists, Victoria maintained her rigid posture, chin high, eyes burning with defiance. Only when they began leading her away did she speak again. Her gaze locked on Eleanor. You think this is your triumph? Your happily ever after. Her smile was venomous. Family secrets run deeper than you know, Eleanor. Ask your precious father about the night your mother really died. Ask him what he was willing to sacrifice to protect his reputation. With that cryptic statement hanging in the air, Victoria was escorted from the ballroom, leaving behind a stunned silence. Eleanor looked to Richard, whose face had gone ashen. Before she could question him, Sophie darted out from where she had been watching with Mrs. Caldwell, running to wrap her arms around Eleanor's waist. "Is the bad lady gone now?" she asked, looking up with wide eyes. "Can we be a real family?" Eleanor knelt, embracing her sister tightly. "Yes," she whispered, pushing Victoria's ominous words aside for now. "We can be a real family now." As she stood, Richard joined them, placing one arm around each of his daughters. Together, they faced the room. 3 survivors finally reunited, the broken pieces of the Sullivan family beginning, at last, to mend. 6 months after Victoria Sullivan's arrest, the sprawling gardens of the Sullivan estate were in full bloom. Workers had erected a white gazebo near the jacaranda tree, its wooden structure already entwined with climbing roses and wisteria. Nearby, several rows of chairs faced the temporary altar, an intimate setting for the small gathering that would take place that afternoon. Eleanor stood at her bedroom window, watching the final preparations. Her room, no longer the guest quarters she'd occupied as Grace Turner, but her original childhood bedroom, carefully restored, offered a perfect view of the garden where Sophie was directing the placement of flower arrangements with comical seriousness. So much had changed in 6 months. Victoria's trial had been swift, the evidence overwhelming. She now served a 20-year sentence in a minimum security prison, her empire dismantled, her reputation in tatters. The financial empire she had so desperately schemed to control had been restructured, with Eleanor assuming her rightful position as heir to the Sullivan legacy. The media frenzy had eventually subsided, though Eleanor Sullivan's miraculous return still occasionally made the tabloids. More meaningful were the changes within the mansion's walls, laughter echoing through previously silent corridors, family dinners that stretched into the evening with conversation, and most importantly, Sophie's transformation from a withdrawn, silent child to an exuberant 9-year-old who now rarely stopped talking. A knock at the door interrupted Eleanor's thoughts. Mrs. Caldwell entered with a garment bag. "The alterations are complete. Miss Eleanor," she said, hanging the bag carefully on the closet door. "And your father is asking for you in his study." "Thank you," Eleanor smiled. "Tell him I'll be right down." After Mrs. Caldwell left, Eleanor unzipped the bag to reveal Diana's wedding dress. A simple, elegant gown of ivory silk. Eleanor had been surprised when Richard suggested she wear it for today's ceremony, but the gesture felt right, honoring the woman who had loved Sophie and healed Richard after his first great loss. She found Richard in his study, papers spread across his desk. At 47, he looked younger than when she had first returned. The shadows beneath his eyes had faded. His smile came more readily, and he stood straighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "There you are," he said, looking up. "Just finalizing the foundation paperwork. Once we sign these, we're officially launched." The Eleanor Sullivan Foundation had been her idea, an organization dedicated to helping children in the foster system, providing support, educational resources, and assistance in family reunifications. It was her way of transforming her painful past into something meaningful. "I still think we should include your name as well," Eleanor said, reviewing the documents. "This is your vision," Richard insisted. "I'm just the financial backing." Eleanor smiled, recognizing the familiar argument they'd had multiple times. "Well, Sophie's name should definitely be on here. She's contributed plenty of ideas." "Speaking of Sophie," Richard set down his pen, his expression growing more serious. "She asked me something this morning that I wasn't quite sure how to answer." "What was that?" "She wanted to know if she should call you Mom after today's ceremony." Eleanor felt her breath catch. "What did you tell her?" "That it was something she should discuss with you." Richard leaned back in his chair. "She worries sometimes that Diana would be hurt, or that you might not want to replace her." "I could never replace Diana," Eleanor said softly. "And I would never try to. I know that. But Sophie's still figuring out how all these relationships work." Richard smiled gently. "For what it's worth, I think you've been exactly what she needs. A sister and a mother figure all in one." Eleanor nodded, emotion tightening her throat. "I'll talk to her before the ceremony." As she turned to leave, Richard called after her. "Eleanor, are you happy with how things have turned out?" She considered the question seriously. "I spent so many years searching for pieces of myself, never quite fitting anywhere. Now I know who I am, where I belong." She smiled. "Yes, I'm happy. Happier than I ever imagined possible." Later, as Eleanor helped Sophie arrange flowers in her hair, she broached the subject gently. "Dad mentioned you had a question about what to call me after the ceremony today." Sophie fidgeted with the ribbon on her dress. "I just thought, maybe you'd be my mom now, but then I remembered my real mom, and I felt bad, like I was forgetting her." Eleanor knelt to meet Sophie's eyes. "Your mother will always be your mother, Sophie. Nothing can ever change that, and I would never want to replace her. But you're going to be married to Dad," Sophie reasoned. "That makes you my stepmom, right?" "Technically, yes, but I'm also your sister." Eleanor took Sophie's small hands in hers. "So how about this? You call me whatever feels right to you, Ellie, Eleanor, sis. And if someday you want to call me something else, that's okay too. There are no rules for families like ours." Sophie considered this seriously. "I think I'll stick with Ellie for now, but maybe sometimes, when I need a mom thing, I could pretend." Eleanor felt tears prickle behind her eyes. "I think that sounds perfect." The ceremony took place at sunset. With the jacaranda tree showering purple blossoms around the gazebo, only 20 guests attended. Close friends and trusted staff who had become like family over the months. Sophie proudly led the procession, scattering rose petals along the path before taking her place beside Richard at the altar. When Eleanor appeared in Diana's gown, a collective murmur of appreciation rose from the gathered guests. She walked alone down the aisle, a deliberate choice that symbolized her independence and the strength she had found on her difficult journey home. Michael Chen waited at the altar beside Richard and Sophie. Eleanor had met him through her foundation work, a dedicated attorney who specialized in family reunification cases. Their connection had been immediate and profound, built on shared values and mutual respect. When he had proposed 3 months ago, the answer had been an easy yes. As she reached the altar, Richard kissed her cheek before placing her hand in Michael's. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become," he whispered. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, with Sophie delivering a heartfelt reading about chosen families that left few dry eyes among the guests. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Michael kissed Eleanor with a tenderness that spoke of promises beyond words. At the small reception that followed, Eleanor found a moment alone with Richard, while Michael danced with Sophie, the little girl standing on his shoes and giggling as he waltzed her around the terrace. "He's a good man," Richard said, following her gaze. "He is," Eleanor agreed. "Though I think Sophie might be his favorite Sullivan," Richard laughed. "She has that effect on people." He turned to face Eleanor fully. "I've been meaning to tell you something about what Victoria said at the gala." Eleanor had almost forgotten Victoria's parting accusation, the insinuation about Diana's death that had been overshadowed by subsequent events. "There was no dark secret," Richard said quietly. "Diana died of cancer, but Victoria tried to suggest to the medical board that I delayed treatments, that I somehow prioritized business over my wife's care." He shook his head. "It was her final attempt to discredit me." "Another lie in a lifetime of manipulation." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "I never believed it. Not for a moment." As the evening progressed, Eleanor found herself beneath the jacaranda tree, its branches now strung with twinkling lights that reflected off her wedding band. Michael joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Chen Sullivan." "I was just thinking about circles," she said, leaning into him. "How life sometimes brings you right back to where you started, but as a completely different person. Philosophical on your wedding day," he teased gently. "Grateful," she corrected. "For the journey, even the painful parts, they led me here." Sophie bounded up to them, her flower crown slightly askew. "Dad says we're going to plant a new tree. Come see." They followed her to where Richard stood holding a small sapling in a decorative pot. "A new tradition," he explained, "for new beginnings." Together, the 4 of them moved to a spot Richard had selected near the old jacaranda. Sophie helped dig the hole, chattering about how tall the tree would grow and how her children would play beneath it someday. As they patted the soil around the young tree, Eleanor felt the pieces of her fractured life finally lock into place. Not erasing the past, but building something new from its foundation. The lost daughter had found her way home, not to reclaim what had been stolen, but to create something even more precious from the broken pieces. Later that night, after Sophie had fallen asleep and the guests had departed, Eleanor and Michael strolled through the moonlit garden arm in arm. "Happy?" he asked simply. Eleanor looked back at the mansion, windows aglow with warm light, no longer the cold mausoleum she had first encountered. Inside was her father, who had never stopped searching, her sister, who had brought laughter back to silent halls, and now her husband, who loved her not despite her complicated past, but partly because of the strength it had given her. "Completely," she answered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Above them, the jacaranda tree shed a few late blossoms, purple against the night sky, a gentle reminder of a little girl who had once climbed its branches, lost her way, but finally, improbably, found her way back to where she belonged.